paradrama tales.
He broke me, then he died, and left me $100,000. Now his family says I should give it all away to the woman he cheated with and the child he hid from me. But what no one's asking is, what did he owe me before he left? We were never perfect, but for 5 years, he was my world. We built a life together, brick by brick. Quiet Friday nights, shared laundry days, arguments about toothpaste, and whispered apologies under the covers. I believed in us even when we were shaky. Especially then. He had a lot of darkness in him, regret, guilt, and old scars that never quite closed. I thought love could fix that I could fix that. And for a while it felt like maybe I was right. We had dreams, talked about kids, a house near water dogs that would shed all over the couch. I held on to those things like they were promises. But behind all that, something was rotting. He was pulling away slowly, like someone afraid of being caught. He started staying out later, keeping his phone closer. And then came the day I found out, not from him, but from someone else, that he had gotten another woman pregnant. I remember sitting on the floor of our apartment, surrounded by pieces of a life we built, feeling like the air had left the room. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. Just said, "I didn't know how to tell you." Like that was supposed to make it easier. I left. Packed a bag, walked out, and promised myself I wouldn't crawl back this time. I went no contact. Not because I hated him, but because I had to choose myself. He never called, never said sorry, never tried to explain. That silence hurt more than the cheating ever did. It told me everything I needed to know about who he really was and what I truly meant. And yet I still grieved him, not just the man he was, but the man I hoped he would be. Grief doesn't always wait for a funeral. Sometimes it shows up when someone you love walks out the door and never comes back the same. After the breakup, I didn't cry right away. I didn't scream or throw things or beg him to stay. I just sat on the edge of the bed we used to share, staring at the dent his body left in the mattress, trying to convince myself it was still warm. In the weeks that followed, it felt like I was the one who had died. I'd stand in the grocery store holding 2 cartons of yogurt before remembering I didn't need to buy for 2 anymore. I'd catch myself setting his toothbrush next to mine. I'd roll over in bed at night, reaching for someone who no longer existed in the shape I once knew. People around me tried to be kind. They told me to move on, that I was young, that I'd find someone better. But none of that mattered when I was still haunted by the ghost of a man who hadn't even left this earth yet. Worse than the betrayal was the silence. The complete and total absence. He never checked in, never apologized, not even a "how are you" after tearing my life in half. And maybe that's what hurt the most, that he could destroy me so easily and walk away untouched. So I buried him. Not with flowers or eulogies, but with time and distance. I cut off all contact, blocked his number, deleted old photos, hid away every reminder of who we were, and little by little I started rebuilding. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, nights I screamed into my pillow until my throat gave out. But healing doesn't come with a timeline, it comes with survival. One breath, one day, one step. And slowly I began to feel alive again. So when people ask why I didn't attend the funeral, the answer is simple. I already said goodbye, not when he died, but when I realized he was never coming back to the man I loved. The call came on a Wednesday. A woman from the insurance company, polite, direct, emotionless like she was reading from a script. She asked to confirm my identity, then said I was listed as a 50% beneficiary on a life insurance policy. I almost laughed. "Are you sure?" I asked. She was. The policy was recent, dated 6 months after our breakup. Not a leftover detail from when we were together. Not some administrative mistake, a conscious decision. I sat there, frozen phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the woman explain next steps. I wasn't listening though. My mind was racing. Why me after everything? After no apology, no closure, no contact. He still chose me. It felt like he had thrown a grenade into my life. Again. I thought I had closed that chapter. I thought I was done hurting over him. And yet, here I was, holding the ghost of him in the form of a payout money that came not from love, but maybe from guilt. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to cry. But mostly I felt conflicted, because money always complicates grief. It digs into the parts of you still healing and asks, what is 5 years of your life worth? And maybe that was the real shock, not the policy itself, but the fact that he never said a word, never wrote a letter, never told anyone why, just quietly signed the papers and left this twisted gift behind. To the world, he was gone. To me, he had just left something else I never asked for but couldn't ignore. And as I stared at the email confirming the deposit, I whispered something I never thought I'd say again. What am I supposed to do with this? Of all the loose ends he left behind, the car might be the one that made me the angriest. It wasn't just a car. It was my credit, my name, my problem. Back when we were still together, he couldn't get approved for financing, so I co-signed. I told myself it was just paperwork, that it was temporary, that he'd refinance once his credit improved. I believed him, because that's what love does. It loans trust without interest, until it costs you everything. After the breakup, the only contact I had with him was about that car. Texts, emails, voicemails, always asking the same thing. Please refinance it. He never did. Always an excuse, always a delay. And deep down, I think he never intended to. When he passed, the car ended up in my garage, not because I wanted it, because legally I was still responsible. And then the calls started. His mother, his cousin, then the baby mama herself. All of them asking for his car. They said she needed it for work, that I was being heartless, that it's what he would have wanted. And you know what? Maybe it is what he wanted, but I'm not in the business of guessing ghosts. So I made it simple. You want the car? Great. Refinance it. Take it off my credit. I'll sign anything you need. I don't want it, but I'm not going to be stuck making payments for someone I don't trust to make them. They called me selfish, bitter, said I was profiting off his death by keeping the life insurance and holding the car hostage. But the truth is, I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be the cleanup crew for a man who couldn't finish what he started. I wasn't being greedy. I was protecting myself. Because the last time I believed his promises, I ended up with heartbreak, silence, and a monthly car payment that wasn't even mine. And if that makes me the villain in their story, so be it. It started with a voicemail from his mother, soft voice, heavy with grief. I just think, you should consider what's best for his child. Then came the cousin, angrier this time. You already moved on. You didn't even come to the funeral. That money belongs to his family. And finally, the baby mama herself. If you have any decency, you'll give it to us. You weren't part of his life anymore. That phrase hit the hardest. You weren't part of his life anymore. And yet somehow, I'm the one he left behind to handle the fallout. Not them, me, the one he betrayed, the one he ghosted, the one he wrote into a policy 6 months after we ended with no explanation. I didn't ask for that money. I didn't expect it. But when the call came, I didn't feel greedy. I felt confused, then angry, then exhausted. Because the same people who defended his silence, who justified his cheating, who never once reached out to me after the breakup, are now at my door, asking me to do the right thing. But where were they when I couldn't sleep, when I couldn't eat, when I was staring at unpaid therapy bills and wondering how to rebuild a life I didn't see falling apart? Where were they when I begged him over and over again to take responsibility for that car? This money doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't fix what happened. But it feels in a way like the only form of accountability I'll ever get from him. And maybe that's why he left it to me. Maybe it was his version of an apology, too little too late. But something. So, no, I won't hand it over to people who weren't there when it mattered. I won't be guilt-tripped by those who only see value when it's tied to a dollar sign. Doing the right thing, I am doing the right thing by finally choosing myself. People look at the money and see gain. But what they don't see is what I lost to get here. 5 years may not seem like much in the grand scheme of life, but it's long enough to lose yourself. 5 birthdays I planned, 5 Christmases where I wrapped gifts for people who didn't even know my name. 5 years of waking up to a man I thought loved me while he slowly erased my self-worth with half-truths and emotional sleight of hand. I gave him my loyalty, my body, my future, and in return, I got excuses, gaslighting, and a betrayal so deep it left bruises you couldn't see. You know what no one tells you about being cheated on? It's not just the infidelity, it's the way it rewrites your memory. Suddenly, every smile you thought was real becomes a question mark. Every late text, every canceled plan, every night he turned away in bed. Was it ever real? People say you're lucky to get out. You're lucky to move on. But I didn't walk away with clarity. I walked away with trauma, with self-doubt, with years of second-guessing every decision I made. And now, somehow, they look at that insurance check and call it a gift. No, that check is a receipt. A receipt for every time I swallowed my hurt to keep the peace. For every moment I stood by a man who had already started building a life without me. For every apology I gave for things he did wrong. They say love is patient and kind. I was both, and I paid for it. In time, in tears, in therapy. So, when I look at that money, I don't see profit. I see damages. Not awarded by a court, but by the man who knew exactly how much he cost me emotionally, mentally, spiritually. He didn't owe me love anymore, but maybe he knew he owed me something. There's something sobering about holding a check with your name on it, signed by the man who once broke you. Legally, it's simple. He listed me as the beneficiary. He filed the paperwork. He chose the percentage. He could have named his child. He could have named his mother, but he didn't. He chose me, and that choice. It has weight, not just legal weight, but emotional gravity. Because now everyone else is looking at me like I'm holding something I didn't earn. Like I'm obligated to be the better person, to hand it over, to right his wrongs with my own peace. But morality doesn't mean martyrdom. I didn't create this tangle. I didn't write my name on that document. I didn't make promises I couldn't keep. And yet, I'm the one standing here holding the guilt everyone else threw down. They say, but think of the baby. I do. I think of the child born from betrayal, the mother who looked me in the eye before I knew the future that doesn't belong to me anymore. But just because I think of them doesn't mean I have to erase me. You want to know what morality looks like? It looks like walking away from someone you love because they lied to your face. It looks like rebuilding after everything you trusted turned to ash. It looks like standing alone at the edge of the mess they left you in and still choosing not to sink. That money won't change who I am. But giving it away to please people who never stood up for me, that would. I carry enough already: the grief, the betrayal, the silence, the unanswered questions. I won't carry shame that isn't mine. He made a decision, a final one, and now I'm the one left to live with it. Not as a villain, not as a saint, but as a woman who's finally learning that sometimes choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. This fight was never about the money, not really. If it were, I could have taken the check, cashed it quietly, and disappeared, but I didn't. Instead, I've been forced to explain, to defend, to justify a choice I never made but was left holding. Every phone call from his family comes laced with guilt. Every message from mutual friends hints that I'm being cold, greedy, or heartless. But you know what? None of them have asked how I'm doing. No one said, I'm sorry he hurt you. No one said, that must have been a painful breakup. All they see is a dollar amount, something measurable, something easy to judge. But I know what I'm really standing for. I'm standing for the version of me that stayed too long, that hoped too hard, that forgave too easily. I'm standing for the girl who begged him to refinance the car, not because she wanted to control him, but because she wanted freedom from the strings he tied around her credit and her peace. I'm standing for every woman who's been called too emotional for walking away from someone who didn't respect her. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about punishment. This is about not letting myself be erased again. I lost years in that relationship. Time I'll never get back. I won't lose myself now, just to make other people comfortable. The truth is, I don't owe anyone an apology, not for grieving in my own way, not for refusing to co-sign someone else's idea of morality, and certainly not for accepting something he deliberately left behind, maybe because in the end even he knew I deserved it. This isn't defiance, it's clarity. Because I'm done shrinking, I'm done explaining, I'm done letting my story be rewritten by people who only saw the surface. So if I'm standing firm, it's not because I'm attached to a check. It's because for the first time in years, I'm finally attached to myself. He left behind money, but that's not what I truly kept. What I kept, what I chose to hold on to, was my peace. For 5 years, I gave love that was unconditional, even when it wasn't returned the same way. I held space for his dreams, his chaos, his uncertainty. I stood beside him in his lowest, even when I was quietly sinking. So when he passed, no, I wasn't dancing on his grave, but I also wasn't crying like I'd lost something I still had. Because I had already lost him the day I found out the truth. And that grief, I've already buried it. What I haven't buried is myself. Keeping that check wasn't a power move. It wasn't about proving anything to his mother, or the woman who had his baby, or the friends who whispered judgments. It was about finally honoring what I went through, the version of me who stayed, the version of me who walked away, and the version of me today who knows her worth can't be negotiated even in death. That money won't buy me happiness, but it might buy me a little bit of breathing room, a sense of closure however strange and complicated, a reminder that even when people leave messes behind, you don't have to carry them forever. And if you're watching this and you've ever felt like you had to justify your healing, your boundaries, or your peace, especially after being wronged, let me tell you something. You don't. You're allowed to keep what was left to you. You're allowed to walk away without guilt. You're allowed to choose yourself even when no one claps for it. Because sometimes the real inheritance isn't money, it's clarity, it's freedom. It's you finally living life on your terms. So, if this story hit close to home, stick around. Because next time, we're diving into another story of love betrayal and the quiet power of walking away. Subscribe, stay grounded, and never apologize for reclaiming yourself.